So I'm here with Barry Clark, and Barry grew up in South Africa. In fact, he is a fifth generation
Correct.
South African, and then moved to the States. And I want to ask him a few questions about South Africa and about apartheid. So, first with apartheid, I graduated high school in 1982. Didn't even know that word. And around 1986 or so, I was going to my bank, and it was Bank of America in California, and someone had spray painted "Stop Apartheid," and had no clue what that meant. I found out later that that was when there was a big push. There was an activist movement trying to get Americans to divest from the South African government. But I had to learn just on my own what apartheid is. How would you explain it?
Well, the name itself is indicative of what it is. It's the apartheid, which means separateness in Afrikaans. And what that was that every race in South Africa, the whites were kept separate from the blacks, who were kept separate from the Indians, who were kept separate from the coloreds. And a colored in South Africa at that point was somebody of mixed race, like Obama.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been classified as a colored and had to live separately from the other races in the country. So the government at that point, the nationalist Afrikaans speaking government that was in power, that brought apartheid into a reality for that country, divided up the whole country till it looked like a Dalmatian dog.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly white with these black homelands scattered throughout the country.
But as far as the population, the whites were the minority. Is that correct?
Absolutely, only about 4 million, as opposed to, I think at that point it was about 16 million blacks and 4 million whites. So the country was governed by the White Nationalist Party, and with an iron fist, I might say. It was essentially a police state at that point.
How did the white population move into South Africa? What's the brief history of that?
Oh, you've got to go back, just like the United States. It was back in the 1500s. The first settlements started there. The Portuguese, the English, the Dutch, all were using the trade route around the southern tip of Africa and started to colonize. And the two European groups that predominated were the Dutch and the English.
Were they engaged in capturing slaves
Not in South Africa, no.
Yeah.
No,
So there wasn't that history.
no. That was up on the western part of Africa for the most part.
So in those early days, were they getting along with the population? I mean,
No, there were fights, the wars constantly.
Okay.
I mean, Africa's a violent continent, and
Right.
there was constant warfare between the Zulus in particular. I mean, they were a really warlike tribe, and they got into battles with both the British and the Dutch.
Mhm. You mentioned, when you were mentioning the groups under apartheid that were segregated, you mentioned Indians. You mean from folks from India?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And was that just based on their skin color?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at what point did the white nationalist government come into power that actually started establishing apartheid?
1948.
1948.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting date, because wasn't that around the time that the United Nations was formed?
Correct, and that was
And
Jan
around-
Smuts was.
And the Declaration of Human Rights, I think, was...
You may know more than that.
Yeah.
More than I do on
And
that.
I thought that was when, after the fall of Nazi Germany, that
Right.
that colonization was supposed to be, a lot of people started getting their independence.
Yeah,
So that kind of amazes me
right.
so once they came to power, they really sectioned off the, yeah.
Right.
And then,
If you went into a city in the time I was there, then it looked like everybody was together, but everybody went to their own places to have their homes to sleep. That
Right.
people would mix, but they wouldn't mix in restaurants. post offices and stuff, or you would have the white entrance and a non-white entrance to everything.
So very similar
Very
to-
similar to the United States.
So the colored drinking fountain and the,
You got it.
so,
No, there was never a drinking fountain. Never saw one until I came to this country.
oh, is that right?
Yep.
So you were born into that. So as a
Yeah.
child growing up, did you have any, as a little child, did you have any black friends that you played with?
Sure. Was actually born in Tanzania.
Oh, okay.
The only child in the family that was. My parents were coffee farming at the time.
Yeah.
So I grew up speaking Swahili and playing with the local children. But when we moved to South Africa, no, my friends were all white.
How old were you when you moved to
5
South Africa?
5 years old. Moved back down there. Yeah.
So at what point did you start to become aware that the segregation existed and that perhaps it was ethically questionable?
About high school. And then I came to the United States as an exchange student to a school in California in 1969. And
That was a interesting.
That was an interesting time
year.
as well. Yes. And that really opened my eyes to here was a country where everybody lived far more openly together than anywhere else, and there was at least legal freedom to do so, whereas in South Africa they had the thing called the Immorality Act, where you couldn't have a black girlfriend and you couldn't marry across the races. And so the freedom in this country to choose your friends was just mind-boggling to me.
What would happen if you
Hey,
if
go
you
to
had a
jail.
black
Hey, you go to
girlfriend?
jail.
You would go to jail.
Yeah.
How about the black girlfriend? Would she go to jail as well?
Probably. I can't recall.
So once you became aware, did you discuss it with your friends, or was it all internal?
I went back and became a journalist with an opposition newspaper in Durban, the Daily News. There
What
was
do
an
you-
English language newspaper that was classified as an opposition to.
What does that mean, opposition?
It meant that that it would report against the government all of the bad things that were going on, whereas much like Fox News today,
Mhm.
you had the Afrikaans press that would just be a
State.
mouthpiece for the government.
For the state, yeah.
Yeah, a mouthpiece for the state, just like Fox News here.
Yeah.
And the English language papers, the Argus group that I worked for at that point, were essentially writing in opposition to, and would editorialize against the powers, the nationalists.
So there was a free press?
Pretty free, not too bad.
And
Not too bad.
Did the state ever take,
Long as you didn't go too far.
I was going to
I
say,
mean, there
did the
was self-
state ever,
Self-censorship.
and that was out of fear of being harassed?
well, being harassed, yes.
Death threats, things
Well,
like that?
I can't recall that.
Yeah,
But, I mean, there were things that you couldn't write about. And
Right.
and the specifics escaped me so many years later.
do you remember any particular story that you reported on that was powerful for you?
It was about the Battle of Blood River Monument. The Battle of Blood River, the Dutch had a battle with the Zulus, and this was in the 1800s, and they made a covenant with God that if they won that battle, it was a sign from God that the country was theirs, that the land belonged to them, was a God-given right. And Michener's book, The Covenant, is based on that incident. And they, much like here, had ox wagons and circled the ox wagons, and the Zulus attacked, and they won the battle. And they took it from that point, and still today believe that the country is their God-given land. You can argue politics with somebody and maybe change their mind. You're never going to change somebody's mind arguing religion.
Wouldn't that be similar with the Jewish state in
Correct.
Palestine?
There's a lot of empathy between the Afrikaners and the Israelis.
Right.
The Israeli government and the then nationalist government were hand in hand.
You know, and this just reminded me, in 1989, I was backpacking through Europe, and I met a young woman who was backpacking, we were at a youth hostel, and she was from South Africa, but she told people that she was from a different European country. And I said, why is that? And she said,
Pariah.
Yeah, she said I
Pariah
was
state.
not treated well.
Yeah.
This is 1989.
Oh, yeah.
She was in her 20s.
Pariah state. That point.
So you kind of left before, obviously the big reforms.
Correct, yeah. I was there, I wanted to try and exercise political change from within the system. We didn't have television growing up. The
Right.
government had kept it out because it was a liberalizing influence. When
Well,
I
wait a
s-
minute. So the technology was there, but it
Oh,
wasn't.
God, yeah.
What do you mean we didn't have television?
There was no television, period.
in the whole state?
In the whole country.
So can you give me a date?
1976 was the first television broadcast, and I did the first national news broadcast because I came back to the States, studied television, Pasadena City College, which had a great program, went back, and I wanted to try and exercise political change from within the system,
Yeah.
go and work for the government
Right.
with a very powerful medium. And I went back, got the job to direct the news, and 1976, right in the middle of the Soweto riots, which were huge at that point, the first broadcast went out in January 76, and that was the beginning of television in South Africa.
Are you talking? I'm a little blown away. Are you talking about television news or just
Period.
television? Period.
Period.
So there was no entertainment. There was no.
Period.
And the government kept that
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want people to be able to show
To
things.
see
as
the
they are.
outside world.
And when you say you were
Movies,
part,
you could have movies that were censored. I
yeah,
mean, they banned Black Beauty.
that's about a horse, isn't it?
Oh, really?
And they banned
They banned
because of the.
because of the name, yeah.
No way.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah, it was incredible.
Um,
But yeah, there was no television, period.
So-
There was radio, South African Broadcasting Corporation, broadcast in 27 languages, right up the whole continent of Africa. Huge propaganda machine.
was there an
big-
opposition radio?
No, in Mozambique you could get LM radio,
Yeah.
and that was it.
Was
Uh,
yours the only opposition newspaper?
No, all the English papers were essentially opposition papers
Did you,
in every city.
at that time, did you have black reporters that would work for you?
Oh, no,
That wasn't even allowed.
no.
So
Had black drivers.
everyone was in a subservient role.
Mhm.
How did you get access though to black intellectuals? Would you meet them? Because clearly there was a movement.
I didn't. I wasn't a senior enough reporter at that point.
Yeah.
My best friend Ivor Wilkins went on to write a book called The Super Afrikaner about the secret society, the Broederbond, that really controlled the government within the Afrikaans community, Afrikaner community. He became, later on was working he worked Daily News like I did, and then I left and did television. He went and sort of graduated up to one of the big Sunday papers, the Sunday Times, and he was their top political reporter. He was very active. He lives in New Zealand now. He got out as well.
Right. So back to the 1976 broadcast. Were you personally
No,
there?
no,
You were
no.
producing.
I was behind, yeah.
Yeah. And
Calling the camera shots.
right. But at that time, are they filming the riot?
Oh, yeah.
And then are they filming that in a way that sort of demonized the rioters, or?
So here we are. I did an 8 o'clock news in English, an 11 o'clock news in Afrikaans, because we were bilingual.
Yep.
And in between, I had every other in my news studio. We had NBC, ABC, CBS, CBC, BBC. They would come in and we'd do their satellite feeds out to the rest of the world. Their reports were conflagration and the country's on fire, which was true. And we would do our news. Everything's under control.
Do you think that those foreign broadcasters were? I mean,
It
we
was
can say
it was exaggerated to the extent that what they said was true, but it wasn't the whole picture. What we said was true, but it wasn't the whole picture.
Right. There were two opposite sides.
Two
Well,
opposite ends of
they're in the
spectrum.
business of making money, and it was good television. But
That's right.
were they at
Riots
that
are good.
time in '76? Were they criticizing the white government at all for?
Oh yeah,
being
it
oppressive
was
to
a
Western
it was a
press?
free feed. I mean,
Yeah.
they were not restricted on their feed. But it was just fascinating to me. Peter Jennings, I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
him,
yeah,
he was
sure.
there because he was the international correspondent for ABC at the time. I mean, those guys were all there and doing their feeds, and they were not restricted. We certainly put on a different show.
Are any of those broadcasts archived?
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah. Do you think the first broadcast is archived?
I'm sure it is.
That would be interesting
Yeah,
to
yeah.
see that. So, what do you think? Well, why did you move to the United States? Let me ask.
One word: freedom.
Can you
Free to
expand
choose
on
who I
that?
could be friends with. Free to say what I wanted to say.
So it really bothered you at that point.
Yeah, I was also approached by the Bureau for State Security to be a spy for them, and I'll give you an indication of how far-reaching the security program was there.
And this is a program to keep black
Keep everybody
Africans
under control.
yeah. or any white
Everybody.
sympathizers.
Yeah. We moved to West Lebanon, and when
West Lebanon in the United States.
Yeah. And I was setting up Channel 31, the TV station here,
Okay.
back in 1978.
Yeah.
Because I lasted 2 years with the South African Broadcasting Corporation. I saw that the elephant was a lot larger than I was. I had been to Vermont July 3rd, 4th and 5th and had this image of Vermont in my mind, this beautiful, warm, green, pristine place. We immigrated here in 77 in February. It was pristine. But anyway, we moved to West Leb eventually and setting up Channel 31, the TV station. And our first son was born, and we registered him with the South African Embassy to be a dual citizen.
Okay. Yeah.
And when the whole thing came back, the address on the envelope was Westwood Garden Apartments, 35 Seminary Hill, West Lebanon. And I said to my wife, "Where's Westwood Garden Apartments?" That was the legal name of where we were staying. I didn't know it. The South African government knew it.
Oh.
Yep.
Right.
They were tracking.
And keeping an eye on.
Oh yeah.
Do you think? Well, they're not anymore.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So then, once you're in the States, were you watching that country and
Not
and
all
the
that
movement?
much. I ran away.
Because you didn't really want to
Yeah.
see
I came to Vermont where it was far away from everything.
Well, do you remember when Mandela was released?
Yeah, I watched that.
And was that
Amazing.
an emotional?
Very
For
amazing.
you?
Amazing.
Right.
Yeah. And the fact that the president then declared,
Declared.
the fact that he was able to do it was pretty phenomenal. And Mandela has proved to be a giant of a man.
Well, fifth generation, so you must have family still there.
I have my eldest brother is a sugar farmer in Zululand, or KwaZulu Natal it's called now.
Yeah.
And then nieces and nephews. And
What did your brother think when you moved? Was he?
well, gave him a place to visit in the U.S.
So he supported it. I mean.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you go back?
Not very often.
Yeah.
My eldest son has a business in Cape Town. He's in Austin, Texas, and he has a business in Cape Town, so he goes over a lot. He's there probably once every 2 months.
So what do you think I would see if I went there today? If I were obviously if I went back there under apartheid, I would see the segregation. What would I experience today? Do you know?
Yeah, it's very cosmopolitan, and there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of unemployment.
So it's just
Yeah.
a struggling economy.
Yeah,
And,
struggling economy.
how about race relations? Are they?
Oh, it was so great when I went there. I hadn't been there for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I went back there, and I didn't know what to expect. Now this is after Mandela's in power and everything, and I didn't know if I spoke Zulu to somebody there how that would be received.
Right.
They loved it. I mean, it was just magic. It was far more friendship across the races there than I see in this country.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So
There's still your pockets, but in a day-to-day setting, I saw far more cross-cultural, interracial mixing and joy, quite frankly, than I see here.
So,
Though it's improved here pretty incredibly in the last 15 years.
well, except one could argue since 2016.
Yeah.
So are you following that, what's happening here? Certain comments made by politicians. I mean, one referring to black countries as, S-hole
S-hole
countries.
countries.
Are you, you must have kind of a unique perspective on that. So what are your thoughts about the current political climate in the States?
Very discouraging. Extraordinarily discouraging.
Do you think it's a passing fad, or are you worried?
Yeah, it's
that
pretty entrenched.
Yeah.
It's tough to watch. Really tough to
Yeah,
watch.
well, even when Obama got elected,
Yeah.
teaching high school, I can remember, this is 2004, and it was Martin Luther King Day. And I was in California, and I had a class of 30 kids, okay? And about 10 of them were Hispanics. And about 1/3 of the school were Hispanics. A lot of them had just crossed the borders as infants
Yeah.
and stuff. And the kids were talking about, and it was predominantly my Caucasian kids, is like, we have come so far, and I'm so glad that racism is gone. And, we made a lot of
Huge.
we made some steps, but I knew that our Hispanic kids were experiencing it a lot. So I turned to them and I said, have any of you experienced racism? Every one of them
Yeah.
had a story.
Yeah.
And the Caucasian kids were blown away, but they hadn't talked about it. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, when Obama came to power, that was seen as a great moment, but at
Right.
the same time,
It entrenched the other side.
yeah, and then we're seeing this racism.
Getting white-lash.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's very discouraging to me to see that kind of entrenched racial hatred that a good segment of the country still has.
Right. So you were in broadcasting, you were a journalist,
Mhm.
you changed careers?
14 times.
Really?
This is what I'm doing right now, catering.
Yeah.
Career number 14. I've started a number of companies in manufacturing and marketing. I had an ad agency in Hanover. I had a individual marketing consulting firm. I had a company where we invented 5 different technologies for groundwater cleanup.
Wow.
And that was in Lebanon. And my last real job was the engineering manager for a $50 million automotive parts factory up in St. J.
Oh, okay.
I'm not an engineer, but I know how to manage them.
Right,
And,
yeah.
that got shut down and moved to North Carolina, and 220 of us lost our jobs.
Oh, my.
I finally took the plunge and started cooking for money.
And is that a joy?
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'm having an absolute blast. I started that 8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great business model. I'm having a hoot and making money.
And you're here cooking for our kids.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was great. How many languages do you speak?
3.
So
Actually 4. I speak American English and South African English. They're 2 entirely different languages.
and Zulu
Zulu.
and Afrikaans.
Afrikaans,
Yeah,
yeah.
Afrikaans. Would I be putting you on the spot if I asked you to give a sample of each? Because I'm thinking of people watching this, and I'm sure.
Well, as long as they can't speak Afrikaans, I'll say what I really want to say.
Yeah, and then no, they're
Maybe I'll
not.
have somebody who speaks and say, that was a pretty bad thing
Or
to say.
Zulu. I mean, I don't think anyone's heard that. So could you just give?
Yeah, Zulu's the one that has clicks in it.
Yeah.
The
What did you say?
shivering skunk crossed the road first and went into the bush. Totally meaningless. It's just
Right.
alliteration.
But
It's the letter Q, that click.
and you learned that as a child, right?
Mhm.
So just growing up, you.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't have to study it. You
No,
picked
I
it up.
never studied it. I speak a very, very colloquial Zulu.
Right, and so with the clicks,
Mhm.
if adults are trying to learn, let's say I went, wouldn't it almost be impossible? I mean, I know a little bit about language acquisition. Wouldn't it be almost
Almost
impossible?
impossible.
Yeah. to
I
pick that up?
just did it with the kids, yeah.
Oh, you did?
Had them-
I bet they loved
Yeah,
it, huh?
I had them to try to do it. They all immediately used the letter K to replace the click.
Yeah, right. And
there's,
then-
there's three different. My nickname as a child was Imkofuklof, which means freckles.
Oh, no kidding.
And then the other click is the letter X. That sounds like Xhosa.
How do you, did they have a written form of it?
They do now.
Yeah, but when you were growing up,
They did then.
They did.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
How do you-
But it's an oral language.
how do you indicate the click?
It's a letter. There's a Q.
Oh, okay.
There's an X. There's a C.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. What about Afrikaans?
It's a very guttural language.
Can you,
Ek sal jou bors oopskeer, kak op jou hart en wie me gat of met jou longe.
oh my gosh, I almost heard
Hopefully no one could speak that.
I almost heard a
because we
Irish-
used to hear that in the military. When I did
Oh.
my army training, that's what they used to
I almost
hear.
heard an Irish brogue in that. I mean,
The R, rolling
Yeah.
at the R, right.
and then the two Englishes that you were,
Yeah.
can you give it?
Give an example.
Yeah.
Well, wow, I don't know. A lot of it are the, don't tune me skeet, man.
Not catching it. Don't.
Yeah, don't say bad things to me.
Huh.
I mean, it's just, there's,
So if I went and I'm hanging around, am I going to hear? I'm probably not going to hear too much Zulu, or am I going to? What am I going to
depends
hear?
where you are. In the province of Natal, it's predominant.
How about the capital?
KwaZulu-Natal.
What would I be hearing? Afrikaans.
Capital?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually three cities that, Pretoria is the executive capital, Bloemfontein's the judicial capital, Cape Town is the legislative capital. There are 11 official languages in South Africa now, but the lingua franca for most everything is English.
So the news broadcasts are going to be English.
Oh no, they're in a bunch of different languages.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say there are 11 official languages, would that mean all literature, like government literature, is printed out
I
in
don't
11
know.
different
I know
languages?
when I was there last, and it was down in Cape Town, and there was a statue and stuff, and then all of what was written about the statue was written in 11 languages,
Yeah.
sort of carved in the plates.
Wow.
But yeah, English is the predominant language. Zulu is the second largest language group. Xhosa is the third.
I learned that.
That's Nelson Mandela.
That's spelled with an X.
Xhosa.
Yeah, so I learned that in my linguistics class.
Yeah.
About the clicks and and that language. So, well, thank you. I can't thank you enough for this interview. What a fascinating life. And
Like I said to you earlier, the Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
yeah, absolutely. And do you think you have another career on the horizon, or you're gonna go out?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's retirement.
Yeah, okay.
That's my last
Yeah,
one.
there you go. Yeah. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, actually,
Appreciate it.